when you really dig into Epstein, his entire network was Israel.
Quit washing your hands, pilot, and release the files! Release the files! Release the files! Do you want those Epstein files? Are we ever going to get these Epstein files? Is it the daddy of all conspiracy theories? Who are these people on the Epstein files? Are they just innocent partygoers that like a bit of fun, or are they the world's worst occultist pedophiles? Why is this information being so guarded? Does it amount to rape and statutory rape charges? Or do you think it's even darker than that? Why does Ian Carroll, who, let's face it, is the go-to voice nowadays on this subject, think that the Epstein files is the key and defining issue? You can have your UFO information. You can have your information on Pfizer and COVID and Building 7. You can have your information on JFK, but when it comes to Epstein, you can't get it. Now, he contests that that's as a result of Epstein being primarily a Mossad agent. Let me know in the comments and chat what you think about that. Certainly, Epstein's power is all-encompassing. The new leader of Canada appears to have peculiar connections to the case. Meet Canada's new Prime Minister, Mark Carney, pictured here alongside notorious child sex trafficker Ghislaine Maxwell. This wasn't just any gathering. It took place at Carney's sister-in-law's estate, Cornbury Park, a known hotspot for globalist elites. That's pretty funny, isn't it? Where do these globalist elites hang out? Cornbury Park. Is Mark Carney a client of Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell? Well, I suppose, is it possible to meet with Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein and not get tangled in some sort of sexual tryst? I certainly hope so, for Bill Gates' sake. Do you imagine that all elites ultimately meet up? I mean, didn't Trump's initial success come from saying, I know that they're corrupt because I use their corruption when campaigning against Hillary? So don't we expect and anticipate that elites commingle and interact? Let me know what you think in the comments and chat about that. Certainly, the prominent and dominant voice when it comes to this matter has become Ian Carroll, certainly since his appearance on Joe Rogan. Ian Carroll, come on the show. Here is Ian Carroll's already legendary appearance on Joe Rogan, where he says he believes the conspiracy theory that will never speak its name is the Epstein file.
Out of all the information that's getting disclosed, supposedly this administration, what do you have the least faith that we're going to come to
Epstein,
a conclusion?
for sure.
Epstein.
And I think it's because of Israel. I
Really?
think that because I mean, when you really dig into Epstein, his entire network was Israel. It was clearly like Ehud Barak was the ex-prime minister and the ex-head of Israeli intelligence. Leslie Wexner was one of the most powerful pro-Israeli philanthropists. The whole organization was Israel. So, and I'm not saying it was all of Israel.
It was all an intelligence gathering, and
it was targeting Americans. It was targeting American officials and the American president.
Right.
And the CIA does have interest in those targets too. Elements in the CIA does. Certainly, they had help from the CIA, and certainly they had help from these other organized crime and intelligence operations. But you don't so for example, Dan Bongino, the new
shout out to Dan Bongino.
What is he, deputy director of the FBI? He recently had this clip that went all around where he said on camera that he had a source that he trusted deeply. And he's an informed guy. He was at a Fox News interview, and the source told him that Epstein was working for an intelligence agency in the Middle East. And I don't know which one, but someone in the Middle East. And to be fair, we all already knew this. We already know who he worked for. At least I think so. But I'm looking at, okay, Dan, so if this giant group of Jewish billionaires is running a sex trafficking operation targeting American politicians and business people and stuff, you think they're working with an Arab or Muslim nation in the Middle East? Like, you think that Leslie Wexner is devoting his entire life to philanthropies on behalf of Israel, but then he's going to work for Saudi Arabia when he's doing this trafficking ring?
Right. But if someone says to him that they're all working for a country in the Middle East, knowing he knows what that means, but not specifying, doesn't he kind of have to repeat it that same way?
Well, he also has to repeat it the same way because he won't get the job if he says Israel. Exactly. Because Israel has so much control over our government right now. And I'm not saying that all Jews are in on something. Clearly, internet. Thank you. Internet. And Joe is definitely not saying that.
Definitely not.
But Israel's government is as vulnerable to the deep state effect as the American government. But I would argue that Israel's government is way more vulnerable to it because of the people that founded Israel and the way it was founded. It was founded in a modern time, much more recently, by it was a revolutionary founding. And I can totally sympathize with the Jewish desire to have that state. I get it. But because of the way that happened, the people that founded Israel were a bunch of organized crime figures in America, the Jewish mob, that were helping with money and with arms trafficking pushing to get the guns there because they had to have guns. And it was the Rothschild banking family sending a whole bunch of money and getting the declaration in the first place. And then the people that were there, the three different organizations, the Irgun, the Lehi group, and the Haganah, those were the three like paramilitary groups that fought to found Israel, and they're like the heroes of Israel, which I understand the narrative that they're heroes, but when Israel was officially founded, they officially designated Irgun and Lehi as terrorist organizations because they had been bombing civilians. They'd been bombing British civilians. The first official act of terror before they changed the definition was the bombing of the King David Hotel, where these terrorists, these Lehi and Irgun terrorists, a bunch of different groups, the guy who planned that bombing later became the prime minister of Israel. They were bombing civilians. And like, so when those are the groups that are fighting to found that nation, even if all the Jews there are wonderful people, the leadership is inherently composed of these people that have been deeply corrupt for all time. And so you get this fertile ground for this kind of deep state effect to take power. And when you start to research the heads of state of Israel over history, you realize that a bunch of them were in those groups doing those terrorist acts and have done a bunch of dark stuff because those were the people that were at the top of that military organization. Like those terrorist organizations reformed to form the IDF.
And what's interesting is
party.
You can talk about this now post October 7th.
It opened wide open.
Post Gaza.
You want to know a funny story, actually? I didn't know shit about it. And I started doing 9/11 stuff. And I was doing a 9/11 video on my YouTube. And I knew about the dancing Israelis conspiracy theory that is very much a real set of documents. And I knew that I'm not allowed to talk about Israel for some reason, and I didn't really know why. And I realized, like, I better fucking understand this thing before I crater my new channel and career on this topic I don't understand. If I'm going to take a stance against Israel at all, I should understand why and how. And so I started doing research, and I shelved that research, and I switched to researching Israel and Palestine and the history there and what's going on. And I finished the video, and it was October 6th. And I was like, I was very worried because it's like, you weren't allowed to talk about it. And I had just made this whole documentary about the history of Israel, Palestine, and the propaganda and what it all was. And I published it on October 6th on my Locals channel. And I kind of had this like lean back and like, if that's the end of the ride and I get canceled for this shit, so be it. And then literally the next day, and I'm not saying that October 7th was a good thing, but I'm saying that literally the next day, the entire internet was ablaze about Israel and Palestine, and everyone was talking about it. Wow. And it was the weirdest fucking coincidence. Like, and suddenly it was like, oh, all right, let's fucking dig this thing open. Because unfortunately, I think that the state of the Israeli influence that sustained them for so long, that was essential to them surviving this long, I think that it has grown cancerous to the Jewish faith in general, because Jeffrey Epstein is the perfect example of this. Jeffrey Epstein was the world's most prolific and evil sex trafficker that we know of so far, ever. And he very clearly was a Jewish organization of Jewish people working on behalf of Israel and other groups. And so that's a dark stain on Israel and on the Jewish people if you own it.
One of the benefits of this new MAGA Maha era is complex and nuanced arguments are emerging where we can even say, well, there is an Israel deep state. If there's a UK deep state and a US deep state, there's an Israel deep state. And to be against the Israeli deep state is not to be against Israel and is not to be an anti-Semite. So as a result of independent media, which is continually maligned for being bombastic, hyperbolic and inaccurate, you actually over time start to develop complexity and nuance, like in evolution. Obviously, as a Christian, I believe in a loving creator, but I believe the way that we materially observe the process of creation in many ways is through evolution, certainly through species outside of our kind. We can see how in independent media, different arguments are evolving now, and we can surely have conversations about power, centralized power, global power, national power, deep state power, without suddenly being maligned as a this or a that. And isn't it the job of independent media contributors of the left, of the right, that are pro-trans, anti-trans, pro-war, anti-war, pro-Ukraine, anti-Ukraine, Russia, whatever flag you stitch onto your skin, you must know that beneath it we have a skeleton and a beating heart, and ultimately we have shared interests and goals, and they may yet emerge from this extraordinary independent media space. But that's just what I think. Why don't you let me know what you think in the comments and chat. Remember, we stream Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday at these times on Rumble, and get Rumble Premium for additional content too. More important than any of that, if you can, please stay free. Rumble have always believed in empowering free speech voices. Do you remember when dirty old Dunkin' Donuts turned their backs, and their stinking donuts? They said that Rumble had a right-wing culture. No. Free speech isn't fascist, but Dunkin' Donuts would have you believe it. So would YouTube, so would all the globalists. Join us on Rumble Premium. You don't only get additional good old Russell Brand Stay Free content, you get additional content from him, and him, and him, and her. Oh, there is a her. And another her. Ah, come on, we did okay. And this gay content. See, we can do it. We ain't no right wing. We're excited to offer you Rumble Premium, a completely ad-free experience with exclusive benefits for viewers and creators. For a limited time, you can get $10 off an annual plan using the promo code BRAND. Visit rumble.com/premium/brand to help me. Use me, help me, and help you. Help me, help you. That's Jerry Maguire, huh?
Help me help you.
Together, we can turn the tide. Whether you join Rumble Premium or simply keep watching, your kindness helps free speech alive. And if enough of you join, I might give you one last glimpse at these little guys.
Hey, thanks for watching. If you want to see more uncensored content where free speech can flourish, join our live stream. Click the link right here to watch the next video if you want to, or become a member of a growing movement. Download the Rumble app and you'll be informed every time we make a new piece of content. Stay free.